What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and you guys absolutely blew up the 2023 rookie draft picks video. We put that out, I want to say last week, and it ended up getting like 10,000 views. It's pretty much a Devy video in May that you guys absolutely smashed. So I decided I'll reward you guys. We'll run it back with the 2024 draft class. So we're going to talk 2024 rookie picks, the players in that draft class, and this class is really strong. It might be just as strong as this 2023 draft class, but in Dynasty, you can acquire these picks at a fraction of the price because 2023 has all of the spotlight right now. Of course, you can cash those 2023 picks in a little bit earlier, or a whole year earlier, but I still think that rebuilding teams that aren't looking to contend anytime in the near future, like maybe not until 2023, 2024, if you just did a startup and you're a productive struggle type team, you should be targeting 2024 firsts. Similarly to how we were targeting them last season, right? Targeting those 2023 firsts for a discount because they're 2 years out. So with this class, 2024, we have 1 year of data. I put all of these prospects through the RS grading system, my prospect model, to kind of gauge how strong this class is, and it's looking really, really special. Now, by the way, RS grades are on the Discord, on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. The 2023 and 2024 classes are now live on Patreon, and you can get that in any tier that's gold or better. So all the Devy sickos out there, if you want access to kind of peek behind the curtains and go deeper and kind of see the RS grades in terms of Devy stuff, that is your place to do it. Now, a little disclaimer, I am not a Devy god, so I can't really give you, this is my Devy startup strategy or anything like that. I have literally done one campus to can startup with a co-manager at Analytics on Twitter. He's pretty much kind of held my hand and guided me through the whole thing. So still in the infant stages of mastering the strategy of Devy, but for player evaluation, I think that it's a nice tool to have. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty babe.
All right, so how we're going to do this is we're going to talk through each position, and then at the end, we're going to kind of talk about how the class stacks up against the previous ones. Now, we're going to talk quarterback first, and at quarterback, we have one very clear top dog. He is projected to go first overall in most NFL draft places, and I'm personally very excited about him. It's Caleb Williams, who played at Oklahoma. He's transferring to USC, but he had a wild freshman year. He looks like an absolute stud. He played at Oklahoma last year, sitting behind Spencer Rattler, who was getting projected to go first overall last year. It didn't pan out for him. He wasn't great. Now he transferred to South Carolina, but Spencer Rattler started the first 5 games. Then the 6th game of the season, they had Oklahoma versus Texas. And Spencer Rattler came out there. He sucked. Oklahoma went down 28-7. And they put Caleb Williams in. I believe that he was a 5-star recruit, if not 5-star, then 4-star recruit, but somebody they were excited about once Rattler left. They bring in Caleb Williams, again, down 28-7, beginning of the second quarter. The first drive that he gets the ball, he takes the ball for a 66-yard run to the house. So we know right off the bat, he has Konami Code type upside, and he eventually led this Oklahoma team, who was down 28-7, to a comeback win, 58-40 or 55-48 over Texas on the road as an 18-year-old true freshman. And it's not just he's this electric guy on the ground. He's a quarterback. He ended up with 16 completions, 25 attempts, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions through the air. Ended up with 4 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. That's a wild stat line to put up in your first ever game time at a really big level, right? I think that's what they call it, the Red River shootout or rivalry, whatever it used to be. Just crazy. Now, the season as a whole, he also absolutely killed it. One of the biggest inputs in my model, the RS grading system, is QBR, which is adjusted total quarterback rating, which values the quarterback on all play types on a 0 to 100 scale, adjusted for the strength of opposing defenses faced. And Caleb Williams absolutely smashed this. As an 18-year-old, he posted an 86.5 QBR. I want to say it was the 3rd or 4th in the nation, only behind guys like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, who we just talked about, ahead of any quarterback in the 2022 draft class as an 18-year-old. I cannot explain how crazy that is. A better QBR than Matt Corral, Ritter, Kenny Pickett, who had an insane year. Just absolutely wild. And when you compare his 86.5 QBR to all of the 18-year-olds in my database, it is the 2nd highest ever QBR rating we've ever seen. 86.5, only 0.02 behind Marcus Mariota's true freshman year. And he is on a list of studs, right? You have Marcus Mariota up there. You have Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. I know that Brock Purdy's in there. Okay, whatever. It happens to the best of us. They're not all going to be hits. But him and Mariota are up at the top. And you can say what you want about Mariota not being like a great quarterback or whatever. He has a top 12 finish, and he was drafted second overall. So it's a good indicator. And then on top of that, you have Herbert and Lamar Jackson, two absolute studs in the dynasty quarterback landscape. And those guys had 73.9 and 72.2. So Caleb Williams is like, in terms of his age 18 QBR, almost untouchable. And because of these advanced numbers, because of him really showing out in his first year, he already qualifies for elite status, which are the highest tier of prospect you can get as a quarterback, and they hit top 12 seasons at a 75% rate. And on top of that, we talked about it earlier, he has Konami code upside. He had an 18% rushing yard market share in this offense, which puts him into the elite Konami code QB bucket. These are QBs we want to be very excited about, right? This is the entire list of all the elite Konami code QBs in my database since 2019. I didn't want to include like Fields and Trey Lance because we haven't seen enough to really put those guys up there as like good hits or anything like that. But I mean, we're talking about the top dynasty QBs, like 4 of the top 5 dynasty QBs or 5 of the top 6 in Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray. Like that is the kind of path that Caleb Williams is on here. He's easily my top quarterback prospect in this draft class. It might be wild to say I'm not a Devy guy. I think as a prospect, just because of the rushing upside and what he did in year 1, I think he's a better prospect. Like I think he's the best quarterback prospect in college football right now. I would have him ahead of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud just because of the rushing ability, what he did in year 1. It's just wild. Now, coming into year 2, he's in a really interesting situation because he kind of got thrown into a whirlwind where he commits to Oklahoma to play under Lincoln Riley, who's like this quarterback whisperer. You got Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, all of these guys that he keeps sending to the NFL at the quarterback position. Lincoln Riley got poached by USC, which is pretty cool that like USC is kind of make a comeback as a football school. But Lincoln Riley goes to USC. Lincoln Riley then convinces Caleb Williams to come to USC. And they also convince Mario Williams, who was his top wide receiver. We're going to talk about in a little bit. Mario Williams, the top wide receiver at Oklahoma with Caleb Williams. So he follows his head coach to USC, brings his top wide receiver. And then on top of that, if you watched the last video, I told you guys one of the top 3 wide receivers in the 2023 class that is on a trajectory to maybe become a legendary prospect, Jordan Addison out of Pitt, he's coming to USC as well. So you are getting 2 elite wide receivers at his disposal at USC. He's going to be tearing the Pac-12 apart. He's going to have Lincoln Riley as his head coach. That offense, at the very least, I don't know what's going on with USC's defense. I imagine it'll take a little bit to kind of like get them into a contending type team, but that offense should be amazing. We should be very excited about Caleb Williams in this draft class. Now, the disappointing part is I wouldn't say it's like the 2023 class where you have Bryce Young and CJ Stroud as like the clear top 2. I'd say it's just Caleb Williams, and there's a pretty big tier break to Quinn Ewers, who is really interesting. I would say where Caleb Williams is an elite Konami code guy, I would say Quinn Ewers, the issue is that he hasn't played at all, but just off of his projected draft capital where he's pretty much a consensus top 5 pick at this point, I put him in like a pretty much a firm gold area where he has the upside to be elite. We just need to see something. And that's the issue with Quinn Ewers is he is pretty much a projection at this point, along with a lot of these other quarterbacks in this draft class, because a lot of them haven't started, right? It's rare as a true freshman to start games at quarterback in college football in general. Ewers is interesting because, again, he's a consensus top 5 pick in 2024, despite never even throwing a pass in college. He sat 1 year behind CJ Stroud, or he sat behind CJ Stroud this year, and at this point, all we really have is his recruiting grade. He is one of the most hyped quarterback recruits coming out of high school since Trevor Lawrence. And again, you guys know I'm a data guy, so I'm pretty much flying blinds here with Quinn Ewers. I had to take out my high school recruit Devy Degen kit and look into his 247 profile, and it's pretty wild. He was the number 1 recruit in the entire nation in 2021 with a perfect 1.000 rating on 247, which is just absolutely insane. You don't see perfect scores on 247. Now, I will say it's a little bit wonky because he forgo his senior year to reclassify from 2022 to 2021. So instead of going to his senior year in high school, he went to his freshman year at Ohio State. I still don't even know how that works. Like, as a junior, I don't think I had that option. Like, I don't really understand how that works. But a 1.00 grade is wild. Again, he didn't play as a senior, so maybe it would have gone down a little bit, but he's a historically great recruit. The only quarterback to ever have a 1.00 recruiting rating on 247 is Vince Young, another Texas quarterback. Below him, the only other guys that are like .9988 and above, you have Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Now, this isn't a group of like Hall of Famers, MVP guys. The jury's still out on Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. But it's important to note all of them were great in college, and all of them went in the top 12 picks in the NFL draft, which seems to be the path that Quinn Ewers is on. I think at the very least you can say that just the hype of him coming out of college or out of high school means that he is at least on the track to be a top 10 pick in the NFL. And when we dig a little bit deeper into the numbers, the only numbers I have on him are his high school throwing numbers when he was playing in high school in Texas, which if you don't know, I imagine you do, one of the most competitive high school football environments. There's like 48 divisions and all of them are insane. It's wild. Like the competition at that level is like, I'm kind of talking my ass here, but it might be like, I would say it might be like D3, maybe even more than D3. I don't know. I'm kind of an idiot, but it's a really high level of football. And as a sophomore, a true sophomore, this guy put up 4,000 passing yards, 45 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, and 568 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground, which is huge because that doesn't tell me that he is like, obviously he's not going to be Lamar Jackson or Caleb Williams like we just mentioned, but it gives us a path where he probably isn't a statue. He's probably mobile in the mold of like a Sam Howell, Justin Herbert, a Baker Mayfield, somewhere in that range of just somebody that can move, right? That's what we're looking for at the very least with someone like Quinn Ewers. And the issue with him is that, as you guys can see, I talked about that 4,000 yard sophomore year, but he's kind of been chasing that year ever since. Like that, I think that's when the hype really sort of came around for him. He dealt with an injury as a junior, still had fine stats, 2,400 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, 100 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. Maybe that was injury related, him not having as many rushing yards, not sure. But as a junior, even though the stats weren't as good, he did have a run at the state championship where apparently, like I'm telling you guys, I dug deep here because in his sophomore year, he was supposed to be, they were like favorites to win the championship. They were going crazy, whatever. They got bounced in the quarterfinals. But he comes back as a sophomore with the injury or whatever. I believe it was either the quarterfinals or the semifinals, but he comes out here in a state championship playoff game and he puts up 37 completions, 41 attempts, 450 yards, and 6 touchdowns in a playoff game. Now he goes to the championship, and this is actually pretty crazy now. He goes to the championship and he plays against Cade Klubnik, I believe is his name, but he's a 5-star. He is a year younger than Quinn Ewers. He is like one of the top like 3 recruits in this class, 5-star recruit. He got picked up by Clemson. They played in the championship. Klubnik ended up winning. Ewers ended up losing. Still really cool that he made it that far. Just one of like a historic high school type career in Texas, top recruit coming out. So there's a lot of promise, right? You don't ball like that at Texas if you can't play. We just haven't seen it since like 2020 at this point. He has not played a full game of football since January 16th, 2020. We're recording this video today, like May of 2022. So that is a little bit concerning. Now he's going to have every opportunity to kind of prove himself at Texas. He transfers from Ohio State to Texas. Kind of reminds me of when Justin Fields transferred from Georgia to Ohio State. It's pretty much like it's a similar type move. And we've talked about a lot of these weapons, or not a lot of them. We're actually going to talk about a little more of them in a second. But he's going to have Bijan Robinson at Texas. I believe like Steve Sarkisian, he's either like the head coach or the offensive coordinator. He's like known as one of the sort of like a guru pro style offense in college. He's going to have Bijan. Going to have a wide receiver we'll talk about in a little bit, Xavier Worthy, Aguiye Hall, I think is how you say his name. He has plenty of weapons. He doesn't have to win a Heisman or anything. With the hype that he had coming out of school, all he really needs to do, just show something. You can't be Spencer Rattler and get benched in 6 games. Just come out here, play the full season, win some games at Texas, which I know is a tough task. Just show something. Don't be trash, and he will be in the top 5 pick conversation come 2024. Then I think that next tier break after him, I would put Jackson Dart, who is someone that the Devy community really likes, or a niche part of the Devy community really likes. To me, I don't really see it. He seems like a guy that's projected to go in the top 15 to 25 range of the first round, but I'm going to say this a million times this video. Draft capital projections, especially this far out in 2022 when we're projecting out to 2024, super fragile. But he is like the next guy after those top 2. He was a 4-star recruit. He played in 6 games at USC, but he didn't really do a ton. He profiles as a statue quarterback, which we don't like to see. He only had a 2.46% market share of rushing yards last year, and he didn't look great through the air. One of the biggest stats I like to look at quarterbacks, especially for a guy like Jackson Dart, who didn't play enough to qualify for QBR. Big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio, which is big time throws, tight window throws, touchdowns, deep throws, all the good stuff. Turnover worthy play ratio, or turnover worthy plays in general, is just like near fumble, a fumble, an interceptable pass, that kind of stuff. And it's really important at the quarterback position because I think especially in the present day of the NFL, do your positives outweigh your negatives. And with Jackson Dart, he was really bad last year. He had 9 big time throws to 9 turnover worthy plays. That's a straight 1-to-1 ratio. We want like a 2 ratio, right? We want to have like a 2+, 2-to-1 type ratio. 1-to-1 is like an F type grade. And now again, I know that I've pretty much done a bunch of videos breaking down the RS grade system, but I kind of understand that there's going to be people who don't know kind of about my model and what the RS grading system is. Pretty much the entire thing is just like a grading system. So, you have your throwing ability, all that's graded on a A+ to F scale. In throwing, Jackson Dart's an F, and he can't run the ball. Not looking great for him. Now, Caleb Williams comes to USC, so Dart transfers out of there. He goes to Ole Miss, which is interesting because it's going to be a pass-friendly offense with, I believe it's Lane Kiffin who's there. That'll be a passing-friendly type offense with Matt Corral was there. It's going to be interesting. He's going to have running back Zach Evans, who transferred from TCU. I don't really know any of the wide receivers there. He'll have an offense set up for him where if he can ball, he will show it. So he has the opportunity there. I'm not super into him right now, but he's someone to keep your eye on. Now, we're going to have a couple other names I'll mention here. We have Drake May out of UNC, which I'll admit I really only like this guy because he's a 4-star recruit, has some promise, and he is the brother of UNC basketball legend Luke May. I believe that he won one of the championships with UNC, a couple years ago on the basketball team. So I think that everyone's going to love him. Drake May, they're going to love him. He plays at UNC. He's going to have Josh Downs, who's a wide receiver I really like out of UNC. He's a guy to keep your eye on. Again, none of these guys have played like meaningful snaps, or most of them haven't played meaningful snaps. Most of them are just 4- or 5-star recruits just to keep your name on. If they start this year, they'll look good. You have Jalen Milroe, quarterback at Alabama. He was a 4-star recruit. Alabama quarterbacks always have upside, but he'll have to wait until Bryce Young leaves. You have Tyler Buckner out of Notre Dame, who's interesting because he was used almost primarily, I think that he almost had more rushing yards than passing yards last year. And they had, I can't remember his name right now. It's like maybe Jack Cohen or something, but they had a starting quarterback there. Tyler Buckner was more of this, almost like a gadget, kind of used how Jalen Hurts was used on Alabama when Tuas took over, where he's not as dynamic as Jalen Hurts, I don't think, but they would just bring him in as this read option, gadget quarterback type guy, which is interesting because if he's dynamic enough to be that, then maybe if he steps into the starting role and he can throw the ball, we're looking at something good there. Same thing with J.J. McCarthy. He was used in a similar situation. He's a 5-star quarterback. The issue is with him is that Tyler Buckner, the starter, he's gone. The starter for Michigan is still there. He's now a senior. Cade McNamara, who apparently isn't, he's not good at all. So if J.J. McCarthy is anything, he probably should take over that spot this year. Now on to the running backs. And this is where it gets juicy. We have Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. And the wild part about these next 2 draft classes in 2023 and 2024 is we have a legendary running back prospect at the top of both of them. We have Bijan Robinson in 2023, Travion Henderson in 2024. And he looks the part. He's 5'10", 215 pounds. He's a beefy boy at Ohio State in the Big Ten. In his first year, he put up 1,200 rushing yards, 27 receptions, 19 total touchdowns. Just crazy stuff. And as a legendary prospect, it puts him in the conversation with guys like Zeke, CMC, Saquon Barkley, the 3 only firm legendary running back prospects since 2007. Now, I just want to make it clear, Travion Henderson and Bijan Robinson being legendary running backs, it's a very fragile projection at this point because we still have 1 to 2 years from both. But it's really cool to see 2 running backs on pace to be generational prospects at running back because we haven't had, a generational type guy since Saquon. Now you can say Jonathan Taylor. When I say generational, I mean a guy that goes top 10, a Ezekiel Elliott, a Christian McCaffrey, a Saquon, those kind of guys. Now, just to be clear, I didn't really go over what legendary hit rate even means or what legendary tier even means. Legendary is the best prospect tier possible, right? So I have a grading system that I put all of the players through. It's pretty much a prospect model, and each of them are grouped by hit rate of top 12 seasons. And at running back, legendary running backs have a 100% top 12 hit rate. Elite have 80% top 12 hit rate. Golds have 50%. Silver have 25%. Bronze have 7%. And the hit rates vary across all positions, but they're all in that same order of legendary, elite, all the way down to bronze. And as you guys can see, legendary running backs not only need a grade of 10 plus, RS grades again are on a 0 through 10 scale, but they need to be 21 on draft day, early declares, and top 10 draft picks. I cannot express enough. They're on that track, but there is a lot up in the air. They need to be top 10 draft picks. I haven't verified their age, but I imagine they're going to be 21 on draft day. Now, when we talk about Travion Henderson, the prospect, outside of those kind of outside factors, what he's done so far is pretty crazy. And the first metric I like to look at is adjusted yards per team play. And this is rushing yards plus receiving yards, like times 2. So times 2 receiving yards plus rushing yards divided by team plays. And it pretty much just measures production and efficiency with a lean towards receiving yards. And when you put him on this graph, charted over the first 4 years of their careers, now TreVeyon Henderson, we only have 1 year, so the 1 year out of high school is the only spot that matters here. The wild part is when you put him up against the 4 other legendary running backs, he actually leads all of them in adjusted yards per team pass attempt, or adjusted yards per team play in year 1, which is wild. Above Saquon, above Bijan, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, blows all of them out of the water. Especially, it's cool to see him next to Zeke as another Ohio State type running back. TreVeyon Henderson is like, he's the real deal. He was like a Heisman candidate as a true freshman at Ohio State last year. And the next stat I like to look at is receiving yard market share, because we want running backs who can catch passes in fantasy, right? We all play in PPR leagues, and he stands out a little bit less here, right? He's behind Christian McCaffrey, but he's still second ahead of like Bijan Robinson. He's between Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley. But this receiving yard market share, right? So receiving yard market share is just what percent of the overall passing volume are you accounting for? So your receiving yards divided by total team passing yards. When you take into account that he put up the 3rd highest receiving yard market share on this graphic, despite competing with Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's going to be a top 10 pick next year, Garrett Wilson, top 10 pick this year, Chris Olave, 12th overall, Jeremy Ruckert, tight end on Ohio State, 3rd round pick. All of this NFL talent in the passing game, and he still got his in the passing game in year 1. It's wild. It's genuinely wild. Like, he is as good a prospect as Bijan. It's early to say, but if not better. Like, it's pretty wild. And he's at Ohio State, so he's going to have, like, I know that Texas is in the national eye, but Ohio State is one of those, like, premier top teams, so he will have even more eyeballs on him. Now, the biggest thing that's going to matter for Henderson, like with Bijan, is draft capital, and that's out of his control, right? The first round draft capital for Henderson is pretty much locked in at this point, but we haven't seen a running back go top 10, top 15 since Saquon Barkley in 2018. It seems like front offices are getting smarter. They don't want to spend that high-end draft capital on these running backs. So the big issue for TreVeyon Henderson getting into legendary tier is going to be that draft capital. Prerequisite for legendary, again, is top 10 draft capital. I have him projected for 10th right now. He goes top 10 in a lot of 2024 mocks. But again, projected draft capital is very fragile this far out. So if he doesn't go top 10, he'll still be a very, very high-end elite, like a Dalvin Cook, like a Leonard Fournette, even an Adrian Peterson was like a 9.99. Like, he will be, if not legendary, he will be like a 9.99 type guy out of 10. Now, moving on from there, I have a little bit of a tier gap here to Braylon Allen. And it's a similar dynamic to Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. You have 2 clear-cut top dogs in this class. And it's TreVeyon Henderson, then it's Braylon Allen just behind him. And he is really interesting because he plays at Wisconsin and dominated as a true freshman at 17 years old. One of the craziest things about Braylon Allen is they say it all the time on like Twitter and on when they were playing or whatever. He didn't turn 18 until January 20th of 2022. So this entire year, he was 17 years old. He put up 1,200 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground. The main drawback with Braylon Allen is the receiving upside. He only had 8 receptions. He didn't put up a good receiving yard market share. So he profiles as more of a Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb type running back. He's also 6'2", 240 pounds, which is wild. He was recruited to play at Wisconsin as a linebacker, actually, but I believe that he played like running back and safety in high school, and Wisconsin might have had like an injury to one of their running backs, so he came in there, went crazy. He will be playing running back for the rest of his career, but it's absolutely wild. 6'2", 240 pounds is a crazy archetype. Now, when you put him up against the legendary running backs that we talked about earlier, he holds his own in adjusted yards per team play. He's sandwiched between Saquon and Bijan Robinson as the number 3 running back on this list. The major drawback for him, again, is going to be his receiving work. He's in a clear tier below the rest of them with Zeke on the bottom of that receiving yard market share graphic. Now, some of you guys might point to Ezekiel Elliott and say, how come, he didn't catch a ton of passes? Why can't Braylon Allen have that same path? And the issue there is 2 things. One, NFL teams, they covet pass catching from their running backs more than ever right now with Alvin Kamara, McCaffrey, Eckler, all of those guys. Second, Ezekiel Elliott played for a national title contender in Ohio State on a national level at all times, where Braylon Allen's playing for Wisconsin. I think he's probably going to be a Jonathan Taylor type early second type draft pick. Maybe he can be a Melvin Gordon out of Wisconsin, where Melvin Gordon went like top 20 in the NFL draft. He has that in his range of outcomes. Regardless, still very firmly an elite running back prospect in the, mold of a Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor. Now, we're going to talk about some other running backs in the mix here. And we have Will Shipley out of Clemson, Donovan Edwards out of Michigan, Rocket Sanders out of Arkansas. Now, all of them are kind of hovering around the silver area as prospects. It's just tough. This far out, it's hard to expect these guys to put meaningful numbers up in year one for them to look good in the model. So these guys are projected to go day 2. I'm treating them more as like fringe golds with upside to be elite more than silver prospects. Now, when we talk about these running backs, we have Shipley, who is this like white 5-star running back who drew comps to Christian McCaffrey coming out of high school. He had 16 catches at Clemson, 855 yards from scrimmage, 11 touchdowns as a true freshman. Really solid. A lot of film guys love Will Shipley. Now, I don't know a ton about Donovan Edwards out of Michigan, but he leads the 3 of them in receiving yard market share. He was a 4-star recruit, and he got an Alvin Kamara comp on 247. I'm interested. Now, the last one is really fun. We have Raheem Sanders or Rocket Sanders out of Arkansas. My co-manager in my Campus to Canton League at Aiden Analytics told me about him in a Campus to Canton startup, and I'm sold on him. He was a 4-star athlete coming out of high school. He's 6'2", 225 pounds. He's a Florida boy. He's got like a grill. He played wide receiver in high school. He's an athlete coming out, and he plays a running back now. So when you have the build of like 6'2", 225 and a receiving background, like he's almost like Antonio Gibson-esque, but he's not buried in a depth chart behind Darrell Henderson and Tony Pollard and all those guys. He is going to be the main running back at Arkansas as soon as this year. So all 3 of these guys, as you guys can see, good receiving profiles. They're all hovering around the top 12 dotted lines in both adjusted yards per team play and receiving yard market share. Just tough to project them to be any more than like high-end golds at this point, just because we're this far out. We're projecting draft capital. So it's hard to speak on kind of the depth of this draft class. I think that it's hard to sort of speak on the depth of this class as a whole this far out. But as far as the top tier talents in this class, we're talking really, really strong prospects up there with, Bijan and Gibbs and JT and Swift and even like Saquon and Nick Chubb. Travion Henderson and Braylon Allen are up there at this point. Then at wide receiver, this class has already a standout wide receiver that grades out as a super high-end elite. He has a higher RS grade than any 2022 wide receiver with only 1 year of data. And I think that he has a very good shot at becoming a legendary prospect if he stays on this trajectory. Now, it's hard to say this early. We need combine data, draft capital, all that good stuff, film grades. But Xavier Worthy out of Texas looks really good. As a true freshman on Texas, who wasn't a very good team, he had 62 catches, 981 yards, 12 touchdowns as a true freshman. And on a per attempt basis, that was absolutely insane. Receiving yards per team pass attempt is one of the best wide receiver metrics I have in my database, right? It takes receiving yards, it divides it by pass attempts, and it just shows pretty much dominance, right? It's kind of a market share type stat, but it's also efficiency on a per attempt basis. So it's, are you dominating and are you being efficient on your targets? And I put his true freshman season up against the last 6 legendary wide receivers drafted in my database, and he ranks second among this group. A group of Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins, Odell Beckham, DJ Moore, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. In year 1 receiving yards per team pass attempt, he is number 2 on that list, just barely behind Amari Cooper. So the production is there. We just need to kind of see him maintain it over the next 2 years. He has Quinn Ewers coming in, so he'll have better quarterback play, hopefully. Should be able to put up monster numbers with Quinn Ewers. He's projected as a top 10 draft pick this far out. Really, the only drawback on Xavier Worthy is that he is 6'1", 160 pounds. So he's really svelte. He's like kind of like Devonta Smith sized. I would say that he's faster, though. He can grow. If not, doesn't seem to be as much of a problem for teams these days. Jamison Williams was pretty skinny. Devonta Smith was pretty skinny. Teams just don't seem to care as much anymore. Same thing with Marquise Brown was pretty thin as well. People just don't really care. So I would say at this point, he has as good a shot to be a legendary prospect as a guy like JSN. He's really, really exciting. Now, the issue here with this class is there isn't like a big 3 up at the top like 2023. There's actually a massive tier break from Xavier Worthy as a high-end elite, fringe legendary type guy, where now we're talking about fringe golds with upside for elite. And most of these guys don't really have any production, but they were highly regarded prospects on, teams like Alabama and Ohio State. In this group of wide receivers is Mario Williams out of USC. He transferred from Oklahoma to play with Caleb Williams. Then you have Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Then you have JoJo Earl and Jacare Brooks from Alabama. All of these guys are pretty much top wide receiver recruits out of high school. They are like 4 or 5-star recruits, all of them. The only guy I'd put ahead of the rest is Mario Williams, wide receiver for USC. He already showed a pretty good amount, right? He showed a little bit of a flash. You can see him here, receiving yards per team pass attempt. He is a sizable step ahead of the rest, just under that threshold we're looking for top 12 wide receivers. He is going to grade out very well. He already has chemistry with Caleb Williams. He's going to be in a really good offense with Lincoln Riley. I am very excited about Mario Williams moving forward. Then with the Ohio State guys, you have Garrett Wilson and Olave's replacements coming in with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. Now, we'll talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. first, and he is the guy getting the most buzz right now out of Ohio State, and it's for good reason. The Rose Bowl happened. It was Utah versus Ohio State. Really crazy game. If you haven't seen it, you should check out like the highlights or whatever. Really good game, but JSN pretty much stole the show with like 347 yards and 3 touchdowns, whatever. But Harrison has a lot of buzz from that Rose Bowl performance because you have Olave and Wilson sitting out that game. You have Harrison coming in to kind of, see what it's like being one of the starting wide receivers in the offense. And he played well. He had a stat line of 6 catches, 71 yards, 3 touchdowns, which is still really solid for a true freshman in a bowl game environment where it's his first game playing meaningful snaps. Now, he's also the son of Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison for the Colts, which is really cool. He's a 4-star. I will say he's technically the worst recruit in this tier, but it doesn't really matter. He's still like a top 15 guy, 4-star recruit. Now, the other guy at Ohio State is Emeka Egbuka, and he's more of a mystery. He's the number 1 wide receiver recruit in that 2021 recruiting class. He's a 5-star, one of only 2 5-stars in this class. 247 comped him to Juju Smith-Schuster, which is a strong comp considering what Juju Smith-Schuster was not only in college, but like his first 2 years of his career. The issue is that he didn't show much. He didn't really flash in that bowl game. A lot of the film guys like him, but again, just a black box. We don't know what he is, and you can give him an excuse of his first year he was behind Olave and Wilson. Now, when we look at Alabama, you have a similar situation where we have 2 wide receivers in JoJo Earle and Jacare Brooks behind John Mechie and Jamison Williams. They were both true freshmen. They were the only true freshmen on the team to catch over 10 passes. Jacare Brooks looks like the slight lead guy. He had more receptions, more yards. He was the only other 5-star in the class next to Egbuka. Then you have JoJo Earle. Both of these guys, keep an eye out for them. They are pretty much on the fast track to be the next, Judy, Ridley, Waddle, Ruggs, whatever. All those guys coming out of Alabama that are going to be good. Now, I will say they did just have Georgia wide receiver. He's going to be a junior. Jermaine Burton transfer over. So it seems like Jermaine Burton will probably be the one. And then it's up to, JoJo Earle / Brooks to kind of compete for that number 2 spot. Now, moving on to tight ends, I don't have a tight end model, but this class also has one of those top tight ends projected to go top 10, right? We had Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame in our last video. This one we have Brock Bowers out of Georgia, who is even more exciting. He is 6'4", 240 pounds. Apparently, he has high-end athleticism. They clocked him as a 4'5" guy in high school. Now, again, these are kind of like nonsense measurements, but this is all we have to work with. He also was compared to Noah Fant in his 247 blurb, so people think that he's very athletic. Now, when you look at the numbers and you look at the production that Brock Bowers had, it is insane. This is him next to Michael Mayer, right? So projected top 10 pick in 2023. Next to Eric Ebron, Kyle Pitts, and Hawkinson, the last, guys to go top 10 in the NFL draft at the tight end position in the last 5 to 10 years. And you put him next to all of those guys in receiving yards per team pass attempt, and he blows them all out of the water. He has the single best receiving yards per team pass attempt season on this list, and he did it as a true freshman at Georgia. And not only at Georgia, but we make all these excuses, and I like George Pickens. We make all these excuses for George Pickens as to why he didn't, produce with a bad quarterback. Brock Bowers as a tight end went out there and went crazy. He has genuine. I'm not even being over the top when I say this. He has genuine Kyle Pitts type potential as a unicorn, crazy athlete, crazy production. He outproduced Kyle Pitts in receiving yards per team pass attempt in year 1 next to Kyle Pitts' final year in school. It's genuinely an insane stat line from Brock Bowers. Again, I don't watch film. I don't know. I can't verify what his athleticism is. I don't know that kind of stuff. But if he tests athletic, he goes top 10 and he has these kinds of numbers, you're looking at a Pitts type guy. Now, final thoughts on this class. I was going to show you guys how this class stacks up to the other ones historically like we did in the last one. The issue is you can't really put the 2024 class up against other classes yet because it's not complete, right? We're too far out for it to really compete. It was in the bottom 5 of everything. Still really strong in terms of elites at the top. But the issue is that in terms of depth, it's just too far out for anyone to emerge. But at the top, this class is absolutely loaded. At quarterback, we have Caleb Williams, who is going to be the first Konami Code elite quarterback in a draft class, as far as we know at this point, since Trey Lance, Justin Fields. We also have running back wide receivers who are firmly in the conversation to be legendary prospects in Travion Henderson and Xavier Worthy, a elite running back in the mold of Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, and Braylon Allen, a tight end that is on a Pitts-like trajectory in Brock Bowers. So that's 5 really strong elite / legendary type prospects that I would have put as high as the 101 or 102 in the 2022 class. Now, this is a class, again, 5 elite plus prospects. 2022 only had 4 elite prospects: Breece Hall, Burks, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London. And on top of that, we still have 2 more years for 2024 to get those late emerging players like Joe Burrow in his senior year, Devonta Smith in his senior year, all of those late breakouts, anybody that emerges in year 2. You have so much more that this class can grow, that just what you're looking at the top end of this class is absolutely wild. So if you ask me if you should be trading, 2022 picks or just anything in general for 2024 picks, I would say yes. This is a class that I know we all have 6, 7, 8 picks stacked up in 2023, but if you can start, building up that iron bank in that 2024 rookie class, if you can sort of start acquiring, maybe you get 2 firsts in 2024, 3 firsts in 2024. It makes a lot of sense to trade for these picks right now at a huge discount. Everyone is going, crazy for the 2023 class. Now, we've talked about it. It's justified, but I think that it's kind of taking all of the shine. That's kind of letting, people go backdoor and get some of those 2024 picks on a discount. So if we're talking about just straight up what I prefer in terms of value, I think I would prefer a 2024 first to the 108. I think 108 is probably that cutoff point for me, right? I'd rather probably have a top 7 pick to a 2024 first, but pick 108, I'll send that away for a 2024 pretty easily. And I think you could even buy them for cheaper. I saw, I was checking a Dyko's trade tool. I think I saw him sold for Christian Watson, who's like a 110, 111 type guy. So I really think a late first, you could probably get that deal done. Now, I also like the idea of, again, if you're rebuilding or you kind of took over an orphan and you need to offload old running backs, you're not going to get a 2023 first for any of these guys, but Aaron Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, who I actually like as buys, but if you're not looking to compete, you want to offload those pieces. If you can offload those types of running backs for just a 2024 first straight up, I would do that all day long. Now, that is going to do it for us today, fellas. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, and leave a like. I actually it's pretty weird, but I actually kind of enjoy digging into these, Devy type draft classes and kind of digging deep into future draft classes and really getting a feel for how strong these classes are that are kind of on the horizon here. Now, if you want access and you're a sicko and you want to see the 2023 and 2024 RS grades in their entirety, I want to say I have maybe 10 plus prospects for each class and going to be definitely building as the season goes on and kind of updating things as the college season progresses. So if you want to check that out, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. It's going to be in the RS grade library in the Discord. Now, as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like, and as always, I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice. 10-0, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Me.